Sorry, lads. Excuse me. Sorry, lads. I need the space there.
Back of it, down there.
Not in your way, am I?
No, you're grand there. Bugler. 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 Okay. No, you're okay where you are. You're okay where you are.
Oh, you stay where you are. Am I okay here now?
Yeah.
I keep my mouth shut.
Shot of the whole lot of it.
I got it.
And down on the back of it.
Okay. We're ready. Are we ready?
Give me another minute or two.
I have to tell Roshi something before I go.
All right, good.
Roast. Another boat.
There was a fan on that.
Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately we begin it today on a sad note. I would ask you to observe a minute's silence on the passing of Johnny Dooley of the Connowaries. We offer our condolences to his family. Johnny was present at the memorial last year, and Dennis and Michael would like to acknowledge his assistance in researching today's event. Also, would like to remember all those who died in road tragedies just up the road in recent days and keep them in our thoughts today. So we just pause for a minute. May they all rest in peace. Accordia Baloi or Oriv anseo iniu I relig nev wera sa Carrick vio. Har ceanan clown sínta Padre go Hanlon agus kiste Camora an trí of regard Hibberdorn Shanoglig na Hearn ba walam falta ear queen ara de gach dinna go Camora céad blin boss Padre go Hanlon. A varig sa coga caracha sa bhlín nédi agus a fehet trí. Lách é sa quish I brisún Kilquinnig an trío lá de bhain fór, céad blin go díreach ó an lá atá in Nniubhain. Fór sé bás in Ospedale Vílata an Carrick an lá ar na bharach. Ís seacht mbliana d'aois déag. Queeniimish cuma in you na hoglig ella atá corha sa relic seo. Agus na cé ta dína a coilog sa coga fod na héireann. Ba bhfuil am buíochas a gháil don ciste, agus de gach duine a thug tacaíocht chun an comóra starúil seo a choirí bhaim inniu. Distinguished guests, Mrs. Mary Casey and her brother, Mr. Patrick Elward, niece and nephew of Patrick O'Hanlon, and their families here today. We have an apology from Councillor Kieran Burke. He's Mayor of the Carrick and Suir Municipal District, who was abroad, and he sent his apologies. Councillor David Dunn, Deputy Mayor, all councillors from the various districts and former councillors. And especially today we'd like to welcome Carrick's own poet, Michael Cody. And it's great to see Michael here today. And finally, all of you ladies and gentlemen, all most welcome. It's a great honour and privilege for me on behalf of the extended family of Patrick O'Hanlon and the Commemoration Committee of the 3rd Tipperary Brigade Old IRA to welcome you all here today for the centenary commemoration of the death of volunteer Patrick O'Hanlon, a member of Fianna Éireann who was shot in Kilkenny Jail on the 3rd of September 1923, 100 years ago on this very day. He died in the Curra Military Hospital the following day, aged 17 years. We remember today also his fellow volunteers, Patrick Butler of Ballinagranna, who was buried alongside Patrick in the Republican grave, and Jimmy Torpey of Coolnamuck, who was buried in the family plot just a few yards away. We remember also DJ O'Driscoll. He was the local captain of the A Company Battalion of the 3rd Brigade. He is buried here in the adjoining grave. He served as an urban and county councillor in Carrick for over 30 years. We remember all the volunteers buried here and in local cemeteries. And let us reflect for a few seconds on all those who died in the Civil War all over Ireland. Our first speaker today is local historian Walter Dunphy, and what he is going to give us an overview of the Civil War in Ireland. Walter Dunphy.
Thanks, Noel. There weren't many light moments in the Civil War. One I heard was my uncle told me he was standing at the West Gate in 1922 looking down Bridge Street, as they still do. And he was only a young fella. And this man came to the door of DJ O'Driscoll's pub. And the door was locked, of course, because if there was a mixed group inside, the row could break out and the place could be wrecked. So from behind the locked door, Mrs. O'Driscoll asked, "What are your politics?" And he said, "Anything that suits, ma'am." So the drink was more important than the politics. Well, peace came dropping slowly during the War of Independence in 1921. Following the truce in July, the population could relax, meet socially, and enjoy that glorious summer. Many of the volunteers during the truce married during the truce. However, they became visible and traceable to their opponents. The IRA was in straitened circumstances leading up to the truce. Churchill urged Lloyd George to go for a tremendous onslaught. Luckily, the truce came first. Eamon de Valera met Lloyd George in London. Lloyd George impressed on de Valera that partition would have to be accepted and a republic wasn't on offer. What was on offer was Dominion status, and only for 26 counties. Nothing was agreed at that meeting. De Valera selected 5 envoys of plenipotentiary from the elected government of the Republic to negotiate and conclude a treaty with the representative of George V. The 5 Irish delegates, Arthur Griffith, Michael Collins, Eamon Duggan, Gavin Duffy and Robert Barton, sat across the table in Downing Street with the most formidable team that England ever assembled. The British team included Lloyd George, Lord Birkenhead, Austen Chamberlain and Winston Churchill. Under the threat of immediate and terrible war from Lloyd George, the delegates signed articles of agreement after tortuous weeks of negotiation. The final draft fell far short of the Republic declared in 1919. The signatories accepted what became known as the treaty as a stepping stone, freedom to achieve freedom. Arthur Griffith stated, "This treaty is no more a final solution than we are the final generation on the face of the earth." The main constraints of the treaty and the Governor-General representing the Crown. It was a time of high emotion. Compromise causes division. The treaty was passed in the Dáil by 64 votes to 57. The division over the treaty was between realists and idealists. Many of the TDs voted for the treaty out of loyalty to Michael Collins. The idealists refused to climb down from the high ground of the Republic. The Dáil was split and the army split later on. It was a house divided against itself. There were personal rivalries and jealousies in the cabinet long before the truce. The treaty divided the nation. 100 years later, it is best not to judge sincerely held views held by both sides. People were living through an emotional maelstrom. The Four Courts was occupied by the anti-treaty IRA. Under pressure from Churchill, the Free State government attacked the Four Courts on the 28th of June 1922. This action marked the beginning of the Civil War. The worst fate that can befall a nation was about to strike Ireland. Every effort was made by both sides to prevent a calamity. Arthur Griffith warned, "Civil war is an abhorrent thing." They were all young men kill and are killed in war. The Civil War poisoned political life in Ireland for decades. Moral constraints were loosened, deep passions and emotion were unleashed, and it was a great tragedy and should never have happened. The blood feud had swept away unity and idealism. The Civil War had plenty of atrocity moments where the laws of war were ignored. Following the death of Michael Collins, viciousness entered the conflict. Atrocities were committed by both sides. Political prisoners were taken from their cells and executed. 85 Free State soldiers lost their lives in Kerry alone. 5 soldiers were killed by a booby-trap bomb while searching a Republican dugout in Knocknagoshel. The following day, 9 Republican prisoners were taken from their cells in Tralee Barracks to Ballyseedy Cross to be executed as a reprisal. The prisoners were bound hand and foot to a log beside a mine before it was detonated. One prisoner, Stephen Fuller, was thrown clear and lived to tell the tale. All of this happened in the native county of Patrick O'Hanlon. The Civil War ended on May the 23rd, 1923. Frank Aiken ordered the jumping of arms. He had succeeded Liam Lynch as Chief of Staff. Liam Lynch was mortally wounded by the army while making his escape with Aiken and Moss Toomey on the slopes of the Knockmail Downs. One of the Free State soldiers to reach the wounded Lynch was Lieutenant Larry Clancy from Drangan. In an emotional exchange, Clancy confided to Lynch that his two brothers had been shot dead by the Black and Tans. That poignant moment brought the futility of the brothers' war into focus. Many natural leaders lost their lives or were executed during the conflict. Michael Collins, Liam Lynch, Harry Boland, Rory O'Connor, Sean Hales, Cathal Brua, Liam Mellows, Dinny Lacey, Erskine Childers, Dick Barrett, Joe McKelvey. One could add Arthur Griffith to that list as he died suddenly from the stress of the situation. All of those men would have made an enormous contribution to the future growth of the nation had they lived. The constraints of the treaty were later removed by constitutional means in the 1930s. Partition is still intractable. That remaining divisive issue will, we hope, be solved amicably in the coming generations. Almost 4,000 people lost their lives between the War of Independence and the Civil War. If democratic principles had been adhered to in 1919 and the British had left peacefully, even with a temporary partition, nobody would have lost their lives. There is no animosity underground. Let us remember with respect all the great people of that generation who put their lives at risk for our future. May they rest in peace.
Thank you, Walter. Our next speaker is another Carrick big man, Aidan O'Doherty. And Aidan is going to tell us the story of Patrick O'Hanlon. Thank you, Aidan.
Thank you. How do you follow that? From what he... Patrick O'Hanlon, 1906 to 1923. The Irish Civil War, which took place from 22 to 23, was a tragic and divisive conflict that erupted following the establishment of the Irish Free State. Carrick and Suir became a significant theatre in the conflict as tensions escalated between pro- and anti-treaty forces. The town became embroiled in a struggle that mirrored the wider ideological battle occurring throughout the country. One of the victims of this conflict was Patrick O'Hanlon, a 17-year-old boy and a member of the anti-treaty IRA who was shot while a prisoner in Kilkenny jail and died a day later from his wounds in the Carrick Camp Military Hospital. Patrick was the son of Mary and Patrick O'Hanlon Sr., who moved to Carrick shortly after the end of World War I. Patrick Sr. commenced a new career as an outdoor maintenance employee with the Department of Posts and Telegraphs. He had previously served as a soldier based in Tralee, where he married Mary, née Swift, in 1906. The O'Hanlon family set up home at Greenside, where they were joined by Mary's elderly parents, who also moved from Tralee to live with them, and Patrick Jr. followed his father. Into the P&T, he followed his father, securing a job as a telegram boy. Patrick joined the Fine Éireann, those the Boy Scouts of the Irish Republican Army, in 1920 during the War of Independence. Na Fianna was commanded locally by Captain Bernard Thompson of the 3rd Tipperary Brigade, Old IRA, and the role of Na Fianna was to carry messages between IRA companies, pick up intelligence, act as lookouts and observe enemy movements. Patrick's job as a telegram boy gave him free rein to travel throughout the locality and made him very effective in his role as a member of Na Fianna, gathering information and delivering dispatches. Following commencement of the Civil War, Patrick took the anti-treaty side. On the 3rd of August 1922, Carrick was taken by Free State troops under the leadership of General John Prout. Republicans who had previously held the town withdrew to the hills over Carrick Beg, from where they sniped on the occupying soldiers. After their retreat, a series of raids were made into the town, and in December 1922 a large quantity of guns and ammunition were successfully seized on one of these raids. Some of the cash was dumped for safekeeping in the Millvale area. In early February 1923, the arms hideout at Millvale was uncovered. Equipment and sensitive secret documents were gathered in the raid. At the beginning of March 1923, a short time after the Millvale discovery, Patrick O'Hanlon, now 16 years old, was arrested along with Delahunty, Kerwin and McGrath by Free State soldiers and jailed in Clonmel. They were subsequently moved to Kilkenny, where they remained without trial throughout the summer. In July 1923, Patrick's mother Mary took ill and died within a few days of her illness. Despite being only 16 years old and being detained in close proximity of Kilkenny jail, it appears Patrick was not given temporary release to attend his mother's funeral. Conditions in the jail were difficult during this period, as witnessed by another local man, Jimmy Crotty from Coolnamuck, who was said to have shared a cell with Patrick at one point. Following the end of the Civil War in June of 1923, many Republican prisoners remained in jail. Patrick continued to be held without trial in Kilkenny, where on the 3rd of September 1923 he was shot in the leg by a sentry. He was immediately moved to the Curra Military Hospital, where he died from his wounds the following day. While the circumstances surrounding his shooting remains unclear to this day, what is undoubted is that he was unarmed and defenceless at the time of his death. The soldier responsible for Patrick's death is named on the register of death, where he is described as discharging his duty to explain his actions. However, the register makes it clear that this account of events is deeply unsatisfactory, and in a very unusual step includes the following comments on the register. We consider the order issued a disgrace with regards to prisoners. We can consider the other prisoners in the cell should have been called as witnesses. Poignantly, and according to family tradition, Patrick is said to have been shot while reading a letter sent to him by his mother prior to her death. After Patrick's death, he was returned to his home in Carrick, and arrangements were made for his funeral. According to family members, his father was charged with the task of cleaning the remaining blood from Patrick's body before he was laid out and prepared for his final journey. His funeral mass took place in St. Nicholas Church, Carrick. His coffin was draped with the tricolour, and he was escorted by a guard of honour made up of the local anti-treaty IRA battalion to his final resting place in the Republican plot in St. Mary's Cemetery in Carrick Beg, where a volley of shots were fired over his grave. Patrick O'Hanlon is survived by his niece, Mrs. Mary Casey, that we're delighted to have here today, and also by Patrick Elward, Glenconnor and Clonmel, but formerly of Pierce Square in Carrick and Suir. Also delighted to have Patrick here as well. Jesh Day, go Rev Hanham.
Thank you, Aidan. Now we come to the laying of wreaths. Pat English, chairperson of the commemoration committee, is going to lay a wreath on the Republican graves. And now we have representatives of the O'Hanlon, Butler and Torpy families will now lay wreaths. Paul Casey, the great-grandnephew of Patrick O'Hanlon, will lay a wreath on Patrick's grave. James Daly, a relative of Patrick Butler, will lay a wreath on Patrick Butler's grave. And Josephine O'Doherty, niece, and Michael Torpy, nephew of Jimmy Torpy. And Jimmy is buried in a family plot just a few yards above. So, here's a wreath. While they're on their way, we'll just say that the headstone here that we see was erected in 1971 by the 3rd Brigade Old IRA Commemoration Committee. And really they deserve great credit because they were founded, I think, in 1921. And we still have members of that committee with us here today. So we're very grateful for them. And also the committee paid for the refurbishment of the headstone. So we appreciate that very much. Well, thanks to everyone for laying the wreaths, and now our proclamation of 1916 will be read by Neil O'Reen. Neil is secretary of the Commemoration Committee.
Thank you, Noel. Publics na Herdon, the Provisional Government of the Irish Republic, to the people of Ireland. Irish men and Irish women, in the name of God and of the dead generations from which she receives her old tradition of manhood, Ireland, through us, summonses her children to her flag and strikes for her freedom. Having organised and trained her manhood through secret revolutionary organisation, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, and through her open military organisations, the Irish Volunteers, the Irish Citizen Army, having patiently perfected her discipline, having resolutely waited for the right moment to reveal itself, she now seizes that moment, and supported by her exiled children in America and by gallant allies in Europe, but relying in the first instance on her own strength, she strives in full confidence of victory. We declare the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland and to the unfettered control of Irish destinies, to be sovereign and indefeasible. The long usurpation of that right by a foreign people and government has not extinguished the right, nor can it ever be extinguished except by the destruction of the Irish people. In every generation, the Irish people have asserted their right to national freedom and sovereignty. 6 times during the past 300 years, they have asserted it with arms. Standing on that fundamental right and against asserting it in arms in the face of the world, we hereby proclaim the Irish Republic as a sovereign independent state, and we pledge our lives and the lives of our comrades in arms to the cause of its freedom, of its welfare, and of its exaltation among the nations. The Irish Republic is entitled to and hereby claims the allegiance of every Irish man and Irish woman. The Republic guarantees religious and civil liberty, equal rights and equal opportunities to all its citizens, and declares its resolve to pursue the happiness and prosperity of the whole nation, of all its parts, cherishing all the children of the nation equally, and oblivious to the differences carefully fostered by an alien government, which have divided a minority from the majority in the past. Until our arms have brought the opportune moment for the establishment of a permanent national government, representative of the whole people of Ireland, and elected by the suffrages of all her men and women. The provisional government hereby constituted will administer the civil and military affairs of the Republic in trust for the people. We place the cause of the Irish Republic under the protection of the Most High God, whose blessing we invoke upon our arms, and we pray that no one who serves that will cause dishonour by cowardice, humanity or rapine. In this supreme hour, the Irish nation must, by its valour and discipline, and by the readiness of its children to sacrifice themselves to the common good, prove itself worthy of the august destiny of which it is called. Signed on behalf of the Provisional Government, Thomas J. Clark, Sean McDermott, Thomas McDonough, P.H. Pearce, Eamon Cant, James Connolly, Joseph Plunkett. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. In recent days, you may have seen two Mullingar brothers, Frank and Sean O'Mara, were honoured in their hometown with the prestigious Gradam na Héiche Award in recognition of their commitment to Irish culture and heritage. In 1985, they penned their masterpiece, the classic Grace. The story about artist Grace Gifford, who married Joseph Mary Plunkett in the chapel at Kilmainham Jail just hours before he was executed. We now welcome Phila Grace to sing Grace for us. Phyllis, or Phila, hails from Limerick. She's a regular visitor to Carrick, and she is a grandniece of DJ O'Driscoll. Now, please welcome Phila.
As we gather in the chapel here in old Kilmainham Jail, I think about these last few weeks. Oh, will they say we failed? From our school days they have told us we must yearn for liberty. Yet all I want in this dark place is to have you here with me. Oh, Grace, just hold me in your arms and let this moment linger. They take me out at dawn and I will die. With all my love, I place this wedding ring upon your finger. There won't be time to share our love, for we must say goodbye. Now I know it's hard for you, my love, to ever understand the love I bear for these brave men, my love for this brave land. But when Porry called me to his side down in the GPO, I had to leave my own sick bed. To him I had to go. Please join me. Oh, Grace, just hold me in your arms and let this moment linger. They take me out at dawn and I will die. With all my love, I place this wedding ring upon your finger. It won't be time to share our love, for we must say goodbye. Now as the dawn is breaking, my heart is breaking too. As I walk out in this May morn, my thoughts will be of you. And I'll write some words upon the wall, so every one will know I've loved so much that I could see his blood upon the rose. Oh, Grace, just hold me in your arms and let this moment linger. They take me out at dawn, and I will die. With all my love, I place this wedding ring upon your finger. There won't be time to share our love, for we must say goodbye. No, there won't be time to share our love, for we must say goodbye.
Thank you, Philip. How fitting and appropriate that was. Thank you very much. Now we're going to have Donna Phelan, who was a grandniece of Patrick O'Hanlon, and she was going to recite the poem School Tour, Kilmainham Jail by Michael Cody. This is the second part of the half-light of history from Michael's book, Going by War.
School Tour Kilmainham Jail by Michael Cody. These kids could scarce imagine a lost stone chorus greening on the air above the stonebreaker's yard. The swell of birdsong shattered by an impervious voice, commanding thunder. Yet the children's presence in the yard in itself is part of aftermath and story, while far removed from the Maytime fusillade or instant aftershock that triggered prayer and rage and terror in the cells against the muffled orders for the tidying away and brisk disposal of the parts, before the sluicing of the stones in blushing water, some forgotten orderly of empire, baptizing the beginning of its end.
Thank you, Donna. Our closing address will be given by Councillor Pat English, Chairperson, on behalf of the Commemoration Committee. Pat.
Thanks, Noel. As Chairman of the 30 Parade Brigade Old IRA Commemorative Committee, I'm delighted on my own behalf and on behalf of the committee that we honour the memory of Patrick O'Hanlon, a local 17-year-old Fine Éireann volunteer who was buried here in this Republican plot. Patrick died in the Curragh Army Camp Hospital on September the 3rd, 1923, the day after he was shot by Free State soldiers while a prisoner in Kilkenny jail. He died fighting for the maintenance of the Irish Republic 100 years ago today. He made the ultimate sacrifice for his country and remained true to the oath of allegiance to the Republic. Patrick and his comrades gave their lives so that Ireland would be in charge of her own destiny. These young men had the willingness to commit to the dream and devote themselves to reaching that goal. As a community, we must recognise and give due acknowledgement to their lives, motives, sincerity, idealism of Patrick and his comrades, something our generation should never forget. His life amounted to so much, and it is great we are paying honour to his sacrifice today. I would like to thank the descendants of Patrick and the local organisation committee and the members of the 30 Tipperary Old IRA Commemorative Committee for organising this commemorative event today. I am delighted to be in the company of Patrick's descendants as we give thanks to the sacrifice Patrick made for his country 100 years ago today. May he rest in peace.
Thank you, Pat. Finally, we just want to run through some acknowledgements before we conclude the clore. First of all, the pamphlet that was produced for today was the work of Michael O'Brien and his wife Emer, Neil O'Reen and Dennis Landy. We would like to thank O'Brien Marble for restoring the headstone, Neil O'Reen, Secretary, Commemoration Committee, for his visits to Carrick and great work, and Councillor Pat English, Chairperson, and also the committee of the old 3rd Tipperary Brigade. The local group who came together to assist with the project: Walter Dunphy, Mickey Daly, Dennis Landy, Ray Daly, Michael O'Brien, Aidan O'Doherty and Ger Casey. Michael O'Brien and Dennis Landy for their research of the story of Patrick O'Hanlon, and they both wish to acknowledge assistance from Carol Delaney and staff in Carrick Library and Mary McCormack in Thurles Library. A special thanks to Ger Casey for his support also, and the Casey and Elward families. Michael Cody, Frankie O'Doherty, John O'Connor and Shawnee Cosgrave, and all those who participated in today's event. To conclude the clore, we will have the sounding of the last post by bugler Shawnee Cosgrave. Shawnee is a member of the Irish United Nations Veterans Association and retired Sergeant Major in the Irish Army. This will be followed by our own Nevian. So finally, go raibh maith go raibh as ucht bheith an seo aniu agus slán na bhaile.
Yes, that's he's still alive.
Well, Davy.
Sorry, folks, if I can just add one thing to it. The Master of Ceremonies thanked everybody except himself. A round of applause for Noel Torpy.
That was absolutely fantastic. Thanks so much for coming down. Thanks very much.